Mendocino Local Agency Formation Commission of August 6th. First order of business, we'll do roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Hamburg.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Here.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Present, and I'd also like to just let the board know that I'm going to have to be leaving at 9:45 this morning.
Okay,
so
good.
just want to put
Thank you. And Commissioner Rosenberg. Here. And Commissioner McCowan is in the building and will return to the LAFCO meeting shortly. With apologies.
Okay, before we get started, can we do a moment of silence for the fire victims here in the county, Lake County? Okay, thank you. We'll also thank the firefighters and all the support team too for their efforts. This has been a terrible time. Public expression, I don't see anybody in the audience for public expression, so we'll move on to other business. For other business, our candidate is not here.
She sends her apologies. She was not able to make it this morning.
Oh, no, not again.
Okay. Hopefully we'll get her on here. We'll move to item number 4, consent calendar. I would like to pull the claims 4B and 4C. Anything in the regular minutes of June 4th?
B and C.
How about a motion to approve 4A, D, and E?
I'll make said motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call, please.
To clarify, that motion is to approve 4A, 4D, and 4E.
Correct.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Orth.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. Yes. So on the claims, I just wanted to be, for transparency purposes, we ended the year with a deficit of, we had to pull out of our reserves $5,000, and we extinguished our checking account to about $400 to pay for the claims. So just want to let you know, what I wanted to have some direction is, do we put the $5,000 back into reserves now that we did receive a check from the county auditor's office last week for $45,000 to take care of June, July's claims, but there's probably sufficient money to put it back, or do we wait until the end of the year? That's the first time that I'm aware that we've had to pull money out of reserves, so I don't know how the procedure would go to keep it at 25% of the operating budget. So any idea, any interest in letting me know?
Well, I believe when the executive committee went over the financials and discussed it, wasn't there a recommendation to repay it as soon as funds were available?
I just wanted to get the input from the full commission because it is something that hasn't happened in the past, and we do have sufficient money for the time being. We're very fortunate. A lot of the jurisdictions paid their fees up front, so the county, I think, typically was our largest donor. They usually pay us in a month or two, so I think we'll be okay. I just wanted to see if that was okay with the rest of the commission based on the executive committee's recommendation.
I did thank Brick Trails for cutting a check right away, so.
Good. So, is there any objection of putting the 5,000 back into the reserves?
No.
Okay. Good. We are with West America Bank now. It's easier to take it in and out. There are some other issues with the claims, but it's more appropriate that I bring it up during the work plan. So, saying that, I don't have any other additions for the claims, so I'll entertain a motion to approve for B and C.
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you for listening to me. We'll move on to public hearing items. Number 5, there are none. Workshop items, number 6, there are none. And we'll move on to item 7, matters for discussion and possible action. 7A, Mutual Water Company report. I think we've all had a copy of our draft. And Uma, can you go through it with us, please?
Thank you. This starts on page 26 of your agenda packet. Back in February, staff did a report on the AB 54 requirements for mutual water company information gathering. Until AB 54 became effective, which was in January of 2012, mutual water companies were outside the purview of LAFCO. With AB 54, there are certain reporting requirements upon LAFCO request. This report is intended to meet those requirements. And moving forward, the information will be updated in municipal service reviews for that area rather than doing a separate report. Mutual water companies are organized under California Corporations Code 14300. They are private organizations that are owned and controlled by the customers, and they provide irrigation and drinking water. They are also regulated by the the State Water Board, Division of Drinking Water, and in some cases the Department of Real Estate if they're formed to serve a subdivision. In some cases, they also have, they are under the jurisdiction of the California Public Utilities Commission. So the AB 54 requires that the mutual water companies provide non-confidential information in response to LAFCO requests. So what we have done in this report is prepared a profile report on the mutual water companies that are currently operating within the county. We went through a process where we researched online the number of mutual water companies within the county. Would note that there are lots and lots of water companies that are listed on the state website. Not all of those meet the criteria for the mutual water companies that we included in this report. We used a cutoff of 15 service connections or more. Many of the ones that are identified on the website, a state website, are very small, serving, for example, serving a bed and breakfast or an inn on the coast. There are quite a few like that in the county. I want to thank our clerk, Beth, for doing all of the outreach and pulling together the information. On page 28 of the agenda packet, we do have a response record for the number of mutual water companies that we reached out to, those that are active, the responses received. In general, we did get really good responses, had a pretty good rate of response, and we prepared an administrative draft of the report, which we provided to the mutual water company to get feedback and make sure that we had the information correct. For mapping, we worked with the county GIS department, who had most of the mutual water companies mapped. For those that they did not have mapped, we asked for copies of the map from the water company and included those. We did not ask GIS staff to develop new maps for those they did not have. So we sent out over 20 letters. It was narrowed down to about 12 mutual water companies, and those are the ones that are included in the draft document. So what we're asking for, staff is asking for the commission to consider the report and to accept it. It's not a document that we're asking to be adopted. If accepted by the commission, we would post this on the website, and then moving forward, we would include the discussion of these mutual water companies within the relevant municipal service review to get a better picture of the water service provision in that area.
Any questions? Gary?
I just wanted to make the comment for the record that this is an unfunded mandate.
I was going to bring that up.
And then I do have further questions as we get into the document.
Regarding the unfunded, what did this cost LAFCO?
We originally budgeted $1,500. I think we're around $2,400 for this.
Including the maps?
Including, no, not including the mapping. The mapping was mostly done by GIS already. That's why we didn't ask them to do any additional mapping. I think there will be some charges for him preparing the exhibits in the document, but it shouldn't be too much.
So in relation to the one of the agenda items we're having on the RDS or RDAs, there's a grant funding that may be possible. Can we tap into that grant funding for the mutual water companies as well, reimburse costs?
I can certainly ask that question of CALAFCO.
That's where the 3,000 came from.
Yeah. Tony?
Just a general question. All these companies that are listed all produce their own source water?
They use a combination of surface and groundwater, and they have their own permitting process through the State Water Resources Control Board.
So are any of these wearing water from a water district? Like Regina Heights or?
I don't believe so.
Has their own wells.
Okay. So they all basically produce their own source water?
Correct.
Okay.
Jerry?
So when you mentioned that in the future MSR, are you talking about MSR on this particular thing, or these look like they overlap in other districts, or the MSRs, and when we deal with those, this would be like a subset of that?
So as we get into updating the water district MSRs, we will pull in the mutual water companies into whichever water district for that area. For example, if we're doing the Redwood Valley County Water District, we'll pull in any close mutual water companies and include them in that discussion rather than doing a standalone document. I think it will streamline the process and give us a better picture of the water service in that area.
All right, thank you.
It's Carrie.
And actually, that's a really good idea. If there's any annexation or, selling of the mutual water companies, I think it is important to do that within the certain areas.
Are all these mutual companies within somebody's jurisdiction for the MSR?
No, they're not all of them, but they are close, so we would
So
just
we can just add them if they're close.
pick the closest one, yeah.
Tony?
Just as an example, I know the city of Willits is performing a study now on the water services outside their boundaries, but that's an example of where a private water company was purchased, and if LAFCO had any of these powers at that time, it could have, been addressed at that time as well. So,
Excellent.
this is an example.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Could you, for the record, just go through what LAFCO's responsibilities are under AB 54, just for the record?
Sure. Let's see. Page 33. Yeah. So LAFCO is responsible for, just a moment, let me find it. It's for for reporting on information that is not confidential. So it's not our responsibility not LAFCO's responsibility to get into the financials or the customers of the water company, but to provide just an overview of this is what the water company does, this is a map of their service area, and a number of connections. That's basically all that LAFCO is required to report on.
Do we need to talk about their sources?
We are required to, or it does, let's see, these, AB 54 requires that we look at their, any violations that they have on record. So we did look at their sources and included that information. And then we also looked at their violations through the state website and noted the most recent ones. Many of them had old violations that we did not include. I think we included within 10 years in our reporting. I did also want to note that we received feedback after the staff report went out for clarification on the point of view mutual water company that we will incorporate into the final document before we post it.
And then LAFCO has the approval for annexation of a mutual water company service area to a city or a district.
Correct. So in the example that Commissioner Orth gave, LAFCO would have responsibility for that annexation.
Okay, saying all that, we had some that didn't respond. What's our responsibility then?
Well, we had some that responded that that AB 54 did not apply to them, and we received response from their legal representation. For those that didn't respond at all, we included a brief profile with the information that was available through the state website. I don't believe that we are required to dig further, but we will continue to outreach to them as we do the MSR updates.
Huh. So we have an assembly bill that tells us we need to do this, but if they don't do it, it's no big deal. So there's no teeth at all then.
There's not a lot of teeth in the bill, no.
All right. I think that's all I had. Any other questions on mutual? It is a good report. I just unfortunately didn't get a full responsibility, but I didn't realize there's so many of them in the county. It's good to know.
It is good.
Yeah, Carrie.
I wanted to go to page 33. And under mutual water companies in Mendocino County, it's the bullets should go down second from the last. It says the largest local mutual water company is Regina Water Company with an estimated service population of 985, and in parentheses 3,500 with fire hydrants east of the city of Ukiah. I think you flip that, because if you go to the summary, it says number of connections 985 and estimated service population of 3,500. Am I correct, or is that?
That makes more sense.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, well, I should clarify that. Thank you. It's the estimated population for their service connections is 985. They do provide water for fire hydrants, so they expand their service population to 3,500, even though they don't provide drinking water connections to each of those. The fire hydrants do provide that service.
We just went on to emergency power. Maybe
it's quite
not.
possible we're off record now, too. I mean, off the video. Let's check in with Scott.
Scott, are we off?
Okay, it came up back.
Excuse me.
Probably another high tension line got too much smoke on it. We'll brown out.
But see, I think you flip-flopped it in this sentence.
So it should be 3,500.
Yes.
Up to 3,500 with the hot fire hydrant population.
Or reworded to be clear, because I also thought it was a typo.
Okay.
Maybe explain that hydrant, or the fact they provide fire flow to 3,500 and use the word fire flow, because that's the way the rating agency looks at it.
We can make that distinction. Thank you.
It was just confusing if you compared it
Good
to the
point.
summary and then the sentence.
So what should that actually read? Do we have language that is more clear?
Commissioner Orth is correct. It should say with an estimated service population of 985 east of the city of Ukiah, and then we can add a second sentence that says the company provides water for fire hydrants with fire flow to 3,500 residents. Does that make sense? Okay.
Okay.
Because it's not 3,500 hydrants.
Right, that's my point.
4 hydrants per person, that's
Pretty good.
It should make for a better insurance rating.
Insurance rates with that.
That's all right. Anything else, Gary, on your?
Yes.
I see a little pink things on there.
Yeah, I've been going through it. It was really interesting.
It was.
To read. I have another question about correct terminology, and if you go to page 36, the terminology under service and governance, so I'm just going to go with Albion because it's used throughout the document. Second paragraph, the company has no employees, though does contract for water master and bookkeeping services. My question mark was, there is terminology for water master, and that's someone that controls all the water. Is it also inclusive of, I mean, this is a person that does the testing, is certified, does the reporting, etc. And is that a correct terminology, water master? Because the water masters I'm familiar with regulate like appropriation of water in streams, or it's a irrigation district or whatever. They don't go test the water. So I didn't know if this terminology was correct or not. And I looked for definition, but I just decided, okay, just wait till Monday.
I believe that is the correct terminology. I mean, that is language that was provided by the water company.
Okay.
We could dig into that a little bit more with them and ask if that would, if that is the correct terminology. Do they mean a water master in the, that definition that you're speaking of? It would take a little bit more research.
And I don't mean to put more on your plate, because I know it costs us money every time we do something, but we might as well have the terminology correct.
I would wonder if, since they're all source water agencies, that they would need a master to take that water and have someone who's certified for that purpose.
I see. Okay.
So it's possible that the water master could be a water master for more than one water company.
It's a contract situation.
He may contract out for several water mutual companies.
And we do have that in Ukiah Valley with the county water districts.
Okay.
For clarification in the document, maybe capitalize water master so that we know it's an actual position, and you know what I mean? A title of someone.
Sure. Carrie, you had some more?
I think that was about it. I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay, anybody else? All right, so where will this go now? And it'll go on our website, and then it'll eventually be worked into the future MSRs.
Correct. So we'll go ahead and make those changes, and we'll verify that those questions, and then we'll finalize the document and post it on the website if the commission accepts the document with those changes.
Okay.
Before moving on, I just want to say what a good job was done on this. Very informative documents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that the mutual water companies, I spoke to many people that were not staff. Many were board members, and they were wonderful. They were really helpful. They apologized if there were any delay or questions, and then some more employees as well. And everyone was just really cooperative. I really appreciated it.
Do you want a motion on this?
That would be great. One other thing to add is that there were some mapping inconsistencies identified when we sent the county mapping to them. We did refer them to work directly with the county rather than through LAFCO staff to cut back on costs. And a motion to accept the document would be good. Thank you.
Anybody want to jump in? Jerry?
I'll make the motion to accept the document.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
No, this is a motion with changes.
With changes, correct.
Okay. Didn't hear that.
All right, we'll do roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes?
Commissioner Hamburg,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner McNerlin, Commissioner Ward.
Yes. This way I get Scott's name in the minutes.
What's that?
I get your name in the minutes when we do roll call.
Oh.
So we'll move on to item 7B, legal counsel contract amendment. This was discussed at the executive committee level as well, and I'll bring it back to Uma for a recap.
Thank you. This was discussed at the June regular commission meeting, and also discussed, as Chair Ward mentioned, at the executive committee meetings on June 4th and June 20th. Language was included in the proposed contract amendment that put a cap on the expenses, annual expenses per year without prior client approval. The last line on page 78, the last line of the contract amendment says that the contractor agrees that such reimbursement by client shall not exceed $450 per year without client approval. The executive committee reviewed that and is recommending approval of the contract amendment with that language included, and with direction to staff to track the out-of-pocket expenses that are billed to LAFCO. The proposed contract amendment is on page 79 of your packet.
Okay, thank you, Uma. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, only that I think that's consistent with what our discussion was at the previous meeting when we talked about Mr. Brown's contract.
Yeah, and I'll just for the record, you know, having to deal with attorneys, $185 is still a pretty good deal for an attorney with only $450 in additional costs a year.
Yeah.
So, and somebody somewhat expert in the field. So I think it's important that we continue on. I know the relationship with Uma and Scott Brown has been good, and we'll have an opportunity to see him again for the people going to the CALAFCO in October to talk about those issues as well. So hearing that in discussions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment to the contract.
Also move.
Second.
Thank you.
Who was the second? Was it-
Let's do a roll call again, please, Beth.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes?
Commissioner McNerlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you. We'll move on to item 7D, CalLAFCO 7C, Executive Officer Service Contract Amendment. This one was also discussed at the Executive Committee meeting as well. And Uma, can you give us a brief outline of what you're looking for?
Sure. At the executive committee level, we discussed, we reviewed the end-of-year budget. And as we reviewed that, we looked at the anticipated cost through the end of the fiscal year, which was June 30th. Two line items were exceeded. The basic services account was exceeded by just under $3,000, and that was for the countywide redevelopment agency oversight special district election process, which was a state mandated process. And the other one was $154 for work plan, and that was for additional time that was required to accommodate MSR and Sphere update schedule revisions and delays, and also increase in scope of work for 2 of the work tasks. While there are policies in place for exceeding line items for up to 5% or 3,000 of a line item, that flexibility is not contained within the executive services contract. So the executive committee recommended that an amendment be made to the contract, which is included today. When we sent it to legal counsel for review before bringing it to the commission, it was suggested that additional language be included that provided for in cases where there's complex projects and there are hourly, such as applications, EIRs, things that would be paid for hourly on a time and materials basis. So that language is included in your packet on page 86, and it's items 6 and 7. It's standard contract language that is being included with contract executive officers that Scott Brown is working with. So that is before you, and I am happy to answer any more questions. The recommendation is for approval of the contract amendment and authorization to the chair to sign that amendment or to provide direction to staff or additional direction to the executive committee.
Okay, thanks. Tony?
I was just going to say my iPad is giving me fits. It says it's 98% power, but it keeps turning off, so I'm kind of in the dark now.
There may be a packet back in the back.
Well, that's a good idea.
I'll get it for you.
But I would just like to say that I know that Brick Trails will probably be delaying our MSR process just a little bit, as we are hiring a new general manager at the moment.
Oh, Denise.
And we're also interested in the discussion we're having about areas of interest. Thank you.
Okay, Carrie, you and I were there. And,
Well, I'm ready to make a motion.
oh, you are?
Jerry?
Any more commit? Yes, Carol.
I think this is really important because we have a very lean budget, and I think it's important that we make sure that we cover the staff that works for us and make sure that they're adequately compensated for what they do.
Okay, thank you. Jerry?
Oh,
Oh, you were just pointing at Carol?
And a comment I have, it's a very fine line. The more changes we make in SOIs, MSRs, the more money it costs us. And hopefully down the line, once we get a formal kind of template, and we go back to review them, do the updates, probably won't be as much. But on the other hand, we do need to compensate staff for the time that they put in. And I think that's really important, or you don't keep staff. So
Yes.
I'm ready to move to approve and authorize the chair to sign the proposed amendment number 1 to the Executive Officers Service Agreement dated July 1, 2018.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? I would just like to say from my standpoint, it is very frustrating to not see the job get done because of the changes or because of the lack of interest on the behalf of the people we're doing the MSR for. So if anything, I guess their fees may go up in the future because we have to continue to pay our staff more money to do the job. And we do have, as Carol just said, a lean budget. So I don't want to be in a position where we were this last year, where we're having to really look for every ounce of money that we could come up with to pay the bills. So, but it is frustrating, and I know I brought that up in the executive committee. I'd like to get these projects done, but it's a balancing act. I understand, and we do have commissioners here, including myself, that bring up more questions for you that require more work. Carol?
I think one of the things that might help the situation, if we review the packets in a timely manner and send our questions to staff before the meeting.
Yeah, that's something we did bring
So
up.
I think that would be really helpful if the reading happened when we first received the packet rather than the last minute, and make sure that the questions are given to staff early enough so they could make changes before we actually see the final document.
Yeah. And one more comment, Carrie. We are on our second iteration of these, so hopefully the work isn't going to be as difficult, but so we'll hopefully see some less time spent on them. But it is something that I do want to stay on track with as a chair, to see these MSRs being done timely and as accurate as we can. Carrie?
Yeah, I was just going to say in response to Carol's statement that timing from the time you receive a packet to weekend, and then we're here Monday morning, sometimes it's difficult for staff to be able to respond to that. So I think many of us actually do the homework as quickly as possible, but they may not be working over the weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure about a Friday.
Okay.
Tony? one last comment?
I'd imagine the countywide RDA oversight that's costing us was another unfunded mandate?
Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Yes.
It was. It is completed. So
Okay,
that's the
well,
good
at least
news.
the LAFCO commissioner got so selected, correct? to
I'm
be
sorry?
that representative? Didn't John McCowan get selected?
No.
No,
Oh, okay.
no, it was a special district seat, so it
Oh,
was,
okay.
yeah.
Who-
We'll get to that in the next item.
Okay, okay.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other last-minute comments? Let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Orth.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes. Go get them. All right, we'll move on to 7D, CALAFCO call for Board of Director nomination and voting delegate. Apparently, we have a city and a public person for Northern District up.
That's correct, and we included this year under the items for discussion and possible action, so in case the commission would like to make a nomination. So that's why it's here. There is for the Northern region, there is a city member and a public member seat open. The nomination forms and materials are due on September 4th if the commission would like to make a recommendation or a nomination. The second part of this item is to designate a voting delegate for the annual membership meeting, which will be held during the conference. This is a little early since we haven't finalized the commissioners who are attending the meeting. Just wanted to note that.
And we can't do that on our September meeting? It'll be too
We have
late.
to, I believe we have to have the, we won't be meeting until September 10th,
Oh,
and we
okay.
need to have that
By the
name
4th.
in by the 4th.
Who will cast our vote?
Correct.
So who is going, Mr. Chair?
Well, I know our executive officer's going. I did put my name out there, but I only wanted to make sure somebody else knew on the council, on the commission, because I've gone quite a few times. Who has an interest in going?
I did, I think I mentioned it, but same thing if somebody else wanted to go.
Scott, are you interested in going?
No, I defer to Jerry on this.
Okay. Teresa? No. Dan?
Defer to Jerry.
Tony, you want to go?
I had to drop out. I'm going to a special district association meeting in Tahoe instead.
Oh. Well,
John, you need to go to one of those.
I probably do, but when the time comes, I never seem to have the time.
well, I would like to make a motion to nominate Commissioner Gonzalez as our representative to cast the vote for the Northern Region election.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Good. Any more discussion?
That means you'll be lobbied, you know.
Yep, big
That means
time.
I'll need some help from Uma as to where I should go.
We'll work it out.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, Jerry, you're it.
Do I need to fill out a packet? Is that what I need to do, or is that something different?
We just need to put your name in for
Okay.
the roster.
Gary?
Yeah, and I really appreciate the fact you're going. I went to Riverside because no one else, I don't think, was going to go, but we needed to be able to cast our vote. So it's always important to at least have one commissioner in attendance.
So, Kara, you want to go?
I'm not sure if I want to go, but I was thinking our new person that we haven't seen yet, it would be an excellent person to send because
Yeah.
that 101, the first, the
101 would be real
introduction,
important, yes.
I think it would be real, obviously, she's sort of a mystery to me because I haven't met the woman, but it would be really, really important for a new person on our board to go and get the basic information about LAFCOs. Because for the first 2 times I went, I felt it was very, very useful. I'm not sure if I can handle another trip, but that's
So
right.
we're budgeted, I think, 4 commissioners to go,
That's
so
correct.
besides
We currently
Jerry.
have Kevin, Jerry, and Jerry interested.
Yeah,
Kevin did express, Commissioner
Yeah,
Doble
Kevin did.
expressed some interest if no one else wanted that seat.
And so we'll have one more, and that's a good idea, Carol. We could ask our new, hopefully appointed commissioner to see if she's interested in going.
Her term ends December as well, and so far we haven't received a nomination
good
for her
point.
to run again. So that might be.
We'll leave that open then. Okay, is there anything, any more you need on that item?
Does that mean there's no nominations for the board?
Well, since I'm the public, first of all, I'm up for, my term's up at the end of the year too. The person that's running, or has the position now, is from Nevada, is also the vice chair, and incumbents can run again, so he probably has a pretty good chance of continuing that position for the public position. I'm not sure about the city, Jerry or Scott, or
I'm done this at the end of December, but I was hoping to stay on as an alternate if Scott jumps on.
So at this time, I don't feel please don't nominate me. When I retire like Jerry, maybe I'll have some more time.
Okay,
And even though your term is done in December, generally the cities and the county tend to keep the same people on commissions for at least a few years, so you get that experience and you become effectual.
Well, but I think the issue with us has been that the cities, I think we have to swap somebody out, and I know Scott's expressed an interest in being the,
Okay.
so I think we had talked before that maybe we'd flip-flop.
Yeah, that's what we discussed, but
Okay. Okay.
That's up to the
always open to
You're
changes
in
in that
charge.
city selection committee.
Yeah.
It's based on the city manager.
But kind of like what Tony said, I think what probably will happen is they go, really? Okay. You guys are willing to drive to Ukiah then.
Okay, so we've appointed Jerry as the voting member, but we'll pass on the overall CALAFCO board. Okay, we'll move on to item 8, information and report items. 8A, work plan, current and future proposals. This one was quite lengthy, thanks.
It is. We are attempting to do some. Oh, thank you. We're working on doing some more detailed reporting on the status of the work plan and the applications. So I'm going to walk through this. It is more lengthy this time. There's some additional information about the process we go through for the work plans. So for active applications, we have none. Applications on hold. We still have the City of Ukiah detachment of Ukiah Valley Sanitation District served areas. We have no pre-applications in. We have 2 potential future projects. Still the Anderson Valley CSD proposed activation of latent powers to provide water and sewer services, and the proposed consolidation of 4 water districts in the Ukiah Valley area. So no change to those. So in this report, we've outlined, we've gone into more detail about what the 5-year rolling work plan is. We developed the 5-year rolling work plan to be a budget development tool, with the understanding that the work plan can change throughout the year based on which districts are ready to move forward, some that have delays, and changes in the scope of that task as well. So it wasn't really meant to be a in-stone document, but more of a budget development tool, and also to track which documents should be coming up next. In the months between the development of the work plan and the new fiscal year, those work plan tasks can change, and they did not get tracked into this last year, which in the past we have been adopting the work plan as part of the budget document and included as an attachment to the resolution. There is some confusion in that because, for example, we're still working on the City of Willits, which did not get included in the work plan for this fiscal year. There are some work plan assumptions that are noted on the document that are important. We wanted to point out that those, and make clear that the work plan is an estimate based on the minimum staff time that would be required to do those. And I'm going to go into the study development process, and we can talk a little bit maybe about how the work plan can fluctuate and change a bit, and that budget. The rolling plan concept was also to accommodate the projects that roll from one fiscal year to another. The way it had been written before was that a work plan, it was anticipated that all of those tasks would be completed within one fiscal year. That is been very difficult to get done in a fiscal year due to various delays from the agencies, from workshop to public draft, and those kinds of things. So the study development process, we do start with a request for information. We spend quite a bit of time front-loading that request for information document with past information from the previous MSR, and also from information that we can readily gain from their websites, if available. So then we send that request for information to the agency. There's also an outreach portion that goes along with that. So we don't just send them a copy of the RFI, like a cold copy, I guess you'd call it. We contact them, we call them, we email them, we let them know that their agency's MSR sphere update is coming up, and then we give them a little preface on what that is. And we end up doing some education at the same time. What is LAFCO, what we do, and then what the intent of the Municipal Service Review and Sphere Updates is. Through that process, and it takes a couple of months usually to get that information back from the agency. And then with that information, we develop the administrative draft. We have started that already through that outreach process with the information that's available and that we've been gathering. And then we slip those pieces into it that we once it's received. The administrative draft is also kind of where if there's any questions, for example, the city of Willits, we're looking at some sphere options. So we have done some back and forth with legal counsel to make sure that the research we've done makes sense before we provide that information to the city and move forward. Then we come to the public workshop and we prepare a draft study, and as part of the administrative draft, once we get that completed, we send that to the district or the agency. They get a chance to review it, and provide additional information for any of the holes in information that we have identified. And then we go to the public workshop where we receive informal feedback from the commission and the public. That step is usually followed by more outreach required to the district or the agency to address questions and direction. And then we go to the public hearing phase where we prepare a draft study and a draft environmental review, and we bring that to the commission, and then we either get direction from the commission and we come back with a final draft, or that version gets adopted, and then we go into the final study phase, which is where we do the last edits to it. We record the environmental document with the county recorder's office, and then we prepare a letter. We send that to the agency with a hard copy of the document for their records, and then post it on the website, and then it's complete. So that was kind of lengthy, but I wanted the commission to understand the steps that we go through and why and how many places it can get delayed and take extra time. As we've worked through the work plan implementation over the last couple of years, we have learned some lessons. Those are the bullets on page 100 of your staff report, or of your agenda packet. I'll summarize briefly. It's important to do the municipal service review and the sphere update at the same time in the same document. Even municipal service reviews that were done a couple of years in the past some of them have had some pretty significant changes where we'd have to incorporate a minor municipal service review update along with the sphere update. The other thing that we found to be important is to be flexible as flexible as we can in scheduling these municipal service review and sphere updates. For example, the cemetery districts, the really busy time is over the winter months and the holidays. So we ran into some significant delays there, and just staff did not have time to follow up with us. The same thing with the fire districts. During the summer and fall months, it's very difficult to get feedback from the fire districts, understandably so. So if as much as we can to work around those schedules and to be flexible with those. It's also very important, I think, to to build positive working relationships with its districts, so it takes a little bit more time, a little more outreach with folks. We haven't done too many site visits, but we will be with some of the upcoming agency sphere updates. The city of Willits, I've met with them a couple of times, but it's worth that extra time meeting with them to walk them through portions of the sphere updates. It goes smoother in the end. One of the things that we have discussed with the executive committee in working through this, the work plan delays and costs, is that we're going to be doing specific tracking of each of the tasks, so the sphere updates or MSR updates, so that we can get a better idea of what exactly it costs for each one of those documents to create, to develop. And that will help for transparency's sake, and also for developing the budget for future years. So I think that pretty much is the lesson learned. The staff report and the Gantt chart that is on page 102 of your packet is an attempt at being clearer with where things are in as far as scheduling these documents. We have 5 agencies on this Gantt chart, and the bars are color-coded with the steps in the development phase. Sorry, my voice is going out a little bit. Just a couple of notes on the Gantt chart. We specifically did not schedule any hearings or workshops for the first meeting in January, both because we would be anticipating new commissioners, and also the holiday season makes it really difficult to get feedback from folks. I wanted to note that we work concurrently on multiple sphere updates at the same time, so that when there are delays in one, we can pick up another one and keep going with that. And then also, I just wanted to note that that it's really difficult to schedule beyond the public workshop, because when that public workshop happens, that's where we get feedback, and that can, just depending how long it takes us to gather that information together and work with the agencies, can delay the public hearing and the final workshop, or the final adoption. So I would be happy to answer questions about the process, about the staff report, and the schedule. The cost tracking we'll be reviewing with the executive committee quarterly. We'll be doing detailed cost tracking and provide that to the executive committee.
Thank you, Uma. Any questions? John?
Well, I think, first of all, this is very well done. I do have one question on the outreach on page 99 of 104. Instead of just under the second paragraph under outreach, it says for city SOI update studies. I think possibly that should say for city or district SOI update studies. And then I would suggest we might add a new second sentence. I don't have the exact wording, but it would specify that at a minimum, any such meeting would include notification to both the administration and the governing boards of any affected city, district, or the county.
Good point.
We do that, don't we?
Anybody else?
We do.
John, you have some more for now?
That's it.
Thank you. That's a good step to make sure that we include in there. We typically do that, but it's good to note that for reminders.
I think we do now. We ran into a bit of an issue earlier. So.
Okay, thank you.
So
prior to your arrival, I think.
Of course.
Yeah.
That went without saying.
So what do you think on average? Obviously we have $35,000 to spend this budget year, and we have five projects here. So it's about $7,000 a project, give or take. what do you think an average would cost, has been costing us in the past?
I think that we have typically been going over budget about $3,000 to $5,000 on studies. The studies that we've done have gone through some significant delays and a lot of back and forth to make edits to the document. I don't have those numbers. I don't know them, specifically. I think moving forward as we track these, the executive committee will be able to see where we are, and we will do our best to make an estimate on how much workload we have left to do. As the, understanding that the budget is fixed, that's where we get into that fine line dance of moving documents back out a little bit more and rolling forward the ones that are more, one of the things that I had a question come up a couple of weeks ago where an entity asked if we could bump up an MSR. They are almost due for their 5-year review. We had it scheduled out a few years. I suggested they come to the commission with that question, but that's an example of how a work plan could change.
Well, I'm concerned about, and I was going to bring this up during the claim still, but for the month of July, you spent almost $8,100 for MSR work. And looking at your description of what you did, majority of it was the city of Willits. Mm-hmm. In fact, $3,600 was actually for a subcontractor.
Correct.
But we did do work previous year, in the previous budget. In fact, I looked back and you were doing work back in February, March, even in April for the city of Willits.
Yes.
But looking at your schedule here, you're looking at requests for information from July to August. Well, you would think that you would have already that done prior to the $8,100. Anyway, my point is that we're spending $7,000 average. We've already exceeded that with the city of Willits, and we're not even done.
That is correct, but I would say that this is not, I do see what you're saying here, and we did the RFI last year, so that has been completed. We have the administrative draft very far along in the process. Where we are right now is we're going to be providing a copy of the sphere options to the city for discussion purposes, and we'll be meeting with the city to go over those, and then we will very shortly, based on what their feedback is on the sphere options, we will have the administrative draft almost done, and then can provide that to them. And then there are some holes that we are asking for more information from them on, and then once we fill that in, we'll have a workshop draft. We are really close. There is also they will need to reach out to the county if they are asking for any sphere changes, so that is a step in the process as well. But this is where it's difficult to gauge. For example, we have that request for information that isn't exactly accurate. That one's already been done. We are in the administrative draft phase on City of Willits, so it's pretty close. It's hard to gauge what percentage of the effort is left. It depends on what the city, feedback from the city on the sphere options.
Okay. So just for the benefit of the commission, the executive committee did talk about trying to come up with a cost per project, so we know what City of Willits cost is versus the fire districts and stuff, so we can gauge how we're doing as far as our budget goes, because we are exceeding our budget, seems like, on that item year after year. So I think it'd be really important to have that broken down in your billings in the future of how many hours, as well as any out-of-pocket costs, including GIS mapping, because that's part of that cost as well for that particular MSR SOI. So I look forward to that.
We do have a separate line item for the GIS mapping, so it does not come out of the work plan.
I know, but it would give us a pretty good picture of what that particular MSR for the city of Willits cost us.
Yes.
Also, I think these MSRs that we've been reading from you the last couple of years have been very well done. Is it your intent then to take the MSR, give it to the city of Willits city manager or whoever who's going to be reviewing it, and just say, can you go through your MSR and make any changes or updates to your existing MSR? rather than doing an outreach, or just say, can you update your MSR for us?
Well, that's essentially what we're doing with the RFIs that we send out now. We do. I mentioned that we are front-loading them with the information from the old MSRs, and then they have a second opportunity to update their own information when we provide them with the administrative draft. We give it to them in a Word document that they can do track changes in, and they provide that feedback to us. We still have to check those to make sure that because we learned that lesson with the city of Fort Bragg, where the city went in and made some changes, but then it also came out as very, it wasn't unbiased, I guess is a good word to say it. There was some promotion language in there that, so in the future we have to be a little bit careful about that.
Okay, I understand that, but they could update their service units, and is there any change to their
yes,
this or that? They can make those changes.
and we do ask that of them.
Okay.
Yes,
Because that would certainly cut down a lot of time for you guys as staff to make those adjustments. I mean, that was my envision several years ago with Frank McMichaels. We were just going to have our second annuation of the program would just show what the changes were, and that's it. But anyway, Tony?
This is a little off, but it looks like we need a line item to be able to track the unfunded mandate costs to our budget, so that we have a rolling figure that we can represent to our state legislators, because that's certainly why we're going over our budget so frequently.
That is true. Jerry?
And along that line, I think when the public, I think what I learned from the conferences and when you talk to the community, that a lot of people don't know what LAFCO is, and yet, especially for the smaller entities, when they're saying they're getting a bill from us, they're like, hey, what am I getting for this? And a lot of it is basically, hey, look, they made us make you do this, and they're also making us charge you for this. And then, like you said, in the interest of transparency, I think that a lot of times these costs that are kind of coming in and adding more cost and hits on our budget are because of something beyond our scope, or beyond our ability to cap those costs. So.
That's a good idea, though, Tony. So I think at the end of the year, the budget, when we do our budget, say we have to increase it by $10,000 because of unfunded expenses.
It's a percentage.
We have a justification for it.
It's a percentage of our budget every year, apparently.
Right. John?
Thank you. Well, obviously, one size doesn't fit all, so it would be expected that City of Willits, City of Fort Bragg, Ukiah, maybe not so much Point Arena, possibly things are a little more straightforward there, but generally the cities and an organization like the Sanitation District, they're probably going to require more work. They're not going to hit an average. And I think what we had agreed upon previously was unless they were doing something that by its nature triggered additional work, their MSR, their SOI would be included within the annual charges that they pay, and those larger organizations also tend to pay more into the annual budget. So I think what we had agreed, unless they're requesting changes to their SOI, if it's just we're happy with the current SOI, yes, it needs to be updated, we would not be billing them extra. That's my recollection. Maybe I'm mistaken. But so it's only if they're saying we want a change to our SOI, then we would bill them for the extra work associated with evaluating that change and taking it through the process.
I think you're correct in your interpretation. Carol?
I wonder if and the larger the entity, the more their share of cost is. However, the smaller the entity, the less staff there is. So very often the cost of getting the information and the feedback in a timely manner from the smaller the entity within the category is more difficult. So I'm not sure if Willits has the same staff to respond to our questions as Ukiah does, or, I mean, Point Arena is fairly, they haven't hardly any staff at all. So there is no real way of, I mean, I think it's pretty obscure to try to figure out that one, you know, it's going to cost per unit this much money. I think a lot has to do with who is doing the responding and what's the staffing of that entity, and what kind of communications we have with them.
Well, my point
So
was,
I think there's lots of variance.
my point was we already have MSRs for all the districts and cities. If they're not willing to make any changes, we just keep the status quo and move forward.
But then
Why do we have to keep digging and digging and digging
because we
and
want
spending
our
time?
reports to be accurate. Other entities really use our information, or should use our information, and I think it behooves us to have good information. And I think if, you know, rather than just have the status quo that may or may not be accurate, I would like us to do products that are really
Well, then we're back to that
useful.
balancing act, extra cost versus being accurate.
And if they want the information to be right, they have to pay the cost.
If they even care. John?
Well, there's very little value to updating the MSRs if we're not intending to make them accurate. So, you know, at a minimum, I think we need the updated financial information. We certainly need it.
Definitely, yeah.
But it is a fine line with the, a lot of the districts have very limited staffing, or it's, you know, on a volunteer basis. So I think our staff does a good job at taking that into account. And I know individual commissioners, like I know Supervisor Brown and Hamburg, have done individual outreach. Yeah, I think some of our district reps the same. The agencies that we know have staffing, like, you know, the larger cities and some of the more robust districts or community service districts, we would expect them to be responsive to requests for information. So maybe there's a line at which, if they're not responding, maybe it's going to cost them more if they're adding cost to the process by dragging it out. But I do think we have to just understand we're going to be working with the smaller districts to get the info. And I think our staff has done a good job of building those relationships, and again, with the assistance of commissioners. But the only place I'd be willing to drop the hammer is if we know people have the staff resources and they're just not being responsive. That's not a good situation.
So how do you propose charging them more because staff had to spend more time?
Well, it's like, you know, maybe you get a second notice, we need this information, and any cost beyond that, there's going to be an administrative charge for it.
Will we send them a bill?
Exactly.
Okay.
Have we done that in the past?
No.
I didn't think
So maybe we need to maybe we need to refer that issue to the policies and procedures.
Thank you.
Jared?
And I think that's a good incentive, but obviously if we choose to go down that road, we just need to, you know, put it out this coming year, because everybody has to budget for these things. I mean, and I can tell you that Tony brought up a good point earlier when he talked about just a change in leadership, whether it's a council or, you know, because the smaller organizations, sometimes their councils are more active. And Willits, we actually don't have a lot of staff. And we just hired a new city manager, and we've added another planner. So, because the one person trying to respond to all this, it makes it difficult. And sometimes not having we had a couple of interims, so as far as managers, so that also makes it easier to crack the whip when you have somebody that's only there for a temporary period of time. But I think if we decide to do this, I would like to notice all our entities and say, look, this is coming down the pike. And then that it gives you a tool to kind of say, because as a city, I mean, I asked Duma, hey, keep me in the loop when it comes to Willits, just because if I have to insert myself, I don't want to insert myself when I don't need to, but if I needed to, I want to make sure we're not part of the problem. If it's just a question of some back and forth, I wanted to be there, so.
I appreciate your input there, John, but maybe when the second notice goes out for information, we can make a determination whether we want to send them a bill or whether we just say we're just going to go with the status quo.
Well, I think we have to have a policy first.
Well, we probably do.
And then you know, and again, to me, the policy might be if we have to go beyond the second notice and it's, you know, causing additional expense, that's where we start billing. That'd be my suggestion.
Okay. So we'll put that before the planning. Uma?
I had one thought was the approach we've taken with the city of Willits, because we know that they have some issues that they are struggling with and dealing with, that we put together a brief document that outlines the different sphere options for them to consider and review. And that might be a good place for there to be that discussion about funds, and if they wanted to expand their sphere, you know, then CEQA would be kicked in, and it would be probably more than a notice of an exemption, which is what we've been doing for all the spheres that have no changes. That might be a place that would be more appropriate maybe to ask for additional funds to cover the costs.
We don't have that in our policies and procedures now for that kind of work?
It's not very clear on the CEQA review part of it. It's very clear if a city proposes a sphere update outside of the standard of LAFCO's initiated sphere updates. In that case, it's clear that the city would pay for CEQA. My understanding of the policies is it doesn't look that it's very clear at that point if it's a LAFCO initiated process.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to note was that the executive officer listserv did send around a 2015 survey of what different LAFCOs were paying for MSRs, and the one that really stood out was a multi-fire district MSR that was 15 fire districts, and it was $80,000. So I just wanted to, I would be happy to share that document with the commissioners, and I think it actually would be really good for the budget development process, but just to get some perspective on what other LAFCOs pay for having municipal service reviews done and the sphere updates. The numbers that we have put together for our work plan are very reasonable.
Is that an initial MSR SOI, or is that a 5-year look?
I don't know the answer to that. I would have to look.
I'd be interested to know what they do the second time around.
Sure.
What they spend.
That's a good question.
Okay, as John pointed out initially in this subject, it was well done. It's pretty detailed, and I appreciate the work you put into it. Hopefully we can follow it, and I assume you'll give an update to the executive committee at the end of each quarter, say sometime in October. We'll get one for the quarter. John?
Well, I would suggest this come back next month for approval. You know, this is informational, the work plan, right? So it seems like we should approve what is being proposed, because it would involve some changes to our budget process, I believe, if I read this correctly.
There would be no proposed change to the budget for the next fiscal year, but there would be a change to the work plan portion that was adopted with the
Right, so that it's not directly attached to the budget, so that people don't get the wrong impression that this is locked in stone.
Good point.
Yeah.
Can we add the planning come back with possible policies on extra charges as well to be implemented at the same time? If they can meet.
Are you suggesting P&P?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Policy and procedure.
Yeah.
I could ask that question of our legal counsel to see if there are other LAFCOs that have a similar approach, or if he's ever heard of that. I have not heard of that before, so it might be good to run it past him.
I think it's a good suggestion, because everyone else is eating this additional cost, and I think we need to, for the ones that Carol brought up that don't have the staff or they're not willing to participate, it does cost everybody money. And that's one of the reasons, besides the unfunded mandates, where our budget's going under. John?
Well, I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting having that we will charge you policy for every entity we deal with. It'd be for those that have arguably sufficient staff, the cities, the community services districts, maybe the sand district, but you know, most fire districts and so forth would not be included in that. We'd keep working with them on the basis that our staff and commission have been doing. And I think that's a fair balance between we need to get the information and their ability to provide it.
Okay, Carol?
I feel very strongly that whatever we do provide on our website or to the public in terms of our information is the very best information we can give. Because otherwise, we really don't justify the costs in the first place. If our information is not really true and accurate, you know, it's doesn't perform any useful function.
I understand, but a year after they're adopted, there's already misinformation in the document. So
that's why it's really important.
We can't do these every year. It's every 5 years we do.
Yeah, I do, but I mean, I've looked at old documents, and some of them, you know, let's do the best we possibly can, because otherwise we need to be able to justify our existence and what we do.
Let's do it the best we can with the budget we have. How's that?
And my thought is increase the budget so we don't have the sense that we're, you know, straining at the end.
Okay, John brought a good point. We'll bring this back next month and we'll officially adopt it.
The work plan changes?
The work plan changes.
Yes, okay.
And the procedures that we'll be going through in the future.
Okay.
Any other comments? All right, we'll move on to item 8B, correspondence.
I don't believe we had any correspondence outside of the, there was a request for nominations for the Achievement Awards, but that deadline has passed.
Okay, 8C, the Executive Officer Report.
So we've included this at the Commission's request to do an update or an informational item to the Commission regarding the Redevelopment Agency Oversight Board Special District Selection Process. So this was for as of July 1st, 2018. Every county was supposed to, well, all of the RDA oversight boards were consolidated into a single oversight board per county, with the exception of LAFCO, which has 5 due to its size. So in order to select the special district member, that responsibility was given to the Independent Special District Selection Committee, and which was to be run through LAFCO. Because Mendocino County does not have an Independent Special District Selection Committee, the executive officer is granted that authority by code to do so by mail, which we did do. We started that process in June and worked with the Auditor Controller's Office to identify those special districts that were eligible for the seat. That eligibility criteria was that each of the districts included in the selection process would be eligible to receive the RDA funds. Those districts are noted in your agenda packet on page 103 and 104. So we sent out an announcement letter. It's a very similar process to selecting a special district seat for the commission. We sent out the nomination forms on June 15th with a deadline. It was a 30-day deadline, approximately. So July 19th was the deadline. We did get one nomination, which was Andrea Reed from the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. So consistent with code, we did not have to go through a ballot process. That person was automatically selected. So we did the notification process at the end of July, and so it has been completed. We spent just under $3,000 in staff time and costs associated with the certified mailings.
So since this happened after July 15th, I assume the governor didn't pick one too.
No, the county was corresponding with the governor's office, was responsible for that coordination.
Good. So Ms. Reed is informed that she is the person selected, and what will she do?
She will be a representative on the oversight board, and I believe that they are tasked with deciding the distribution of the RDA funds.
Okay. All right, any comments? It's another one of those unfunded one we were talking about, $3,000. There is some grant money, hopefully you'll look into. Also, maybe add the mutual water districts as well, if we can.
I have that noted.
Is that it for the RDA?
That is, yes.
So our next commission meeting is September 10th due to Labor Day holiday. We'll move on to committee reports. I think we pretty much covered the executive committee, didn't we, Sherry?
Policies and procedure didn't meet.
Didn't meet? Okay.
We're still working on scheduling that. We've had some difficulties with commissioners absent during the summer, so we're still working on getting that meeting set.
And the executive committee will meet maybe September to see what your 3-month expenses are for the SOI MSR, and then report it in October.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good.
All right, 8C, commissioner reports.
I have one.
Yes.
I would like to just note that all the fire districts, especially inland, are basically have engines on all of these fires pretty much continuously prior to the Mendocino complex breaking out. Brick Trails is already covering Howard Forest, so I've been following one of our engines that's been on the initial attack on 5 of these fires now. And it's just noteworthy that Zone 1, which is basically Laytonville, this whole 101 corridor, all have engines that have been committed. They're exchanging crews. It's basically looking almost open-ended at this point that all the districts will have at least one, some have 2 engines committed to these fires. Brick Trails will be getting a new water tender in the next 30 days, we hope. So eventually we'll probably be committing up to 2 engines to these state fires. They work within Mendocino County, but you'll find most of the initial attacks are the Zone 1 engines. And then they add all these other fire districts to those responses. And so I would like to end by thanking all the mutual aid companies that have come to Mendocino County and are providing just wonderful service. I think the Vichy Springs fire was a good example of having those strike teams right there enabled. And there's been about 4 new fire starts that have all been jumped on and controlled. Because of the resources that are within Mendocino County. So thank you to all those firefighters who are now serving Mendocino County and Lake counties and saving lives and houses.
Here, here. Very good. Yeah. Did you say you're looking for a new general manager?
We are in the process of hiring a new general manager.
Wow.
Should be within the next 30 days.
All right, anything else? Any commissioners? John?
I'll defer to the supervisor now.
Oh, go ahead. I'll go
Well,
after.
I'm going to take longer than you. Probably.
Uh-oh.
Oh, maybe. I do think it's important to discuss the Potter Valley project. And basically, the project itself is a transfer of water. And the water right was granted for power operation, hydropower, to supply electricity throughout Potter Valley to the city of Ukiah as well, and irrigation water to Potter Valley and beyond is the way the water right in 1905 reads. PG&E was originally the Eel River Power and Irrigation Company. It went to Snow Mountain Power and Irrigation Company, and then it went to Pacific Gas and Electric Company. And PG&E announced in May that they're putting the project on auction, or up for auction. And so the Mendocino County Inland Water and Power Commission wants to be able to gain information you know, the costs, but there's also some more private information that you can't obtain unless you are going forward to see if you can get the project transferred rather than bidding for it on an auction block. FERC does allow that. There's 5-6 scenarios under FERC that can take place. There has been some pushback from PG&E that they're already proceeding to the auction block, so we'll see what happens. This is a water supply that provides for Ukiah Valley, and that includes Redwood Valley, and it goes beyond that, clear down Sunel, all the way to the Mendocino County line. And without the actual project, if it were to be decommissioned, 3 out of 5 years, Lake Mendocino would not fill. And many of our agencies depend on the appropriation of water that goes through the project. It was cut 50% in the last FERC relicensing. That was done when NOAA Fisheries did their Jeopardy decision and went over all the science. This was due to the listing of fish of the time, and a NOAA Fisheries biologist did extract some language out of the terms, which is, this happened to be an E5 that led to the 50% reduction of water being able to be diverted, and that's probably one of the main reasons why PG&E no longer sees the hydro project as being feasible for their interests and their stockholders, et cetera, and maybe ratepayers as well. So we do have a big challenge. There will be an agenda item on the Board of Supervisors agenda for the Mendocino County Water Agency at our board meeting tomorrow. That'll probably be discussed sometime around 2:30, a little bit beyond that. And but it is very critical. When we talk about our MSRs and our SOIs, depending on what happens to that project, there could be big impacts. Yeah, right. So it's certainly important. We all need to be involved and engaged in, especially the water districts, in watching this process.
Tony.
Quick comment. Brook Trails might be willing to sponsor a association of Mendocino water districts next year. I'm not promising that, but we have discussed it, in part because of the relicensing process. And it would be good, like the fire agencies with their association, we've learned that it creates a good lobbying force and allows for commonality and discussion of these type of issues of water conveyance and water storage within Mendocino County, as well as wild and scenic rivers, which are, you know, we need to, especially in the Willits Valley, we see both sides, the Humboldt side and the Mendocino side, and with a new supervisor coming, we're going to need to really be informed and informative. And so it is something we are discussing at Brook Trails.
So you want, before John talks, you want to speak
Well,
up?
I just wanted to respond to Tony that Mendocino County, between the 4 counties that sit on the Eel Russian River Commission, we're the only county that has the interests of both the Eel and the Russian watersheds within our political boundaries, basically. And there is a lot of concern, and so for both sides, answers, asking questions and being able to get the answers, and that pertains also to being able to go to PG&E and sit in their virtual data room in order to get information that some people on the Eel River really want to have, that now is priority to even looking at the project as we go forward. So.
Okay, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I apologize for not being here earlier, but under comments and questions on 7B, the Legal Services Amendment, I'm not really sure that's amendment number 1, since under compensation, it still references the rate of $500 monthly, and I do believe we previously amended that to $600. So that
There could be an amendment 1 with that already then. There could be an amendment 1 already then for
possibly.
that.
So we just need to conform that and make sure that what we're using as the contract is
Okay.
updated.
Good point. Carrie, you want to respond to that?
And I will express a concern that the portion of the compensation that allows him to bill additionally for hours in excess of 12 in any 3-month period, we have no control over the amount of time he devotes to state, LAFCO, and legislative matters. This month it was 1.8 hours, which pushed us 1.7 over the 3 hours allowed per month. So again, that's just a concern that we'll probably revisit in the future. On item number 7C, with regard to the amendment number 1, I'm a bit concerned, the language towards the bottom, now therefore it is agreed that commission does hereby amend the contract amendment as listed above. That's pretty unclear language unless it was reviewed. To me, it would have been a lot more clear if it had said, does hereby amend the executive officer services contract to include amendment number 1 as stated in the attached Exhibit A. But you've already taken action on it, so maybe that's something executive officer and or executive committee could review and see if cleanup language would be appropriate. Because based on the statement in here, it's kind of ambiguous.
Well, regarding the legal contract, I believe with the hours and all, that item can come up next time he wants to raise his rate from 600 to something else. Because as long as we're paying the same amount every year, it doesn't matter what he's billing us for hours unless he wants to increase that.
No, by the terms of the contract.
But he hasn't done that.
If we exceed 12 hours in any 3-month period, expect an additional bill.
Well, we have done that. I've checked that in the past. It was a year or 2 ago, he did exceed 12 hours, but we never received a bill. Now, at that particular time, we can discuss it, but based on past experience, I haven't seen that happen yet. Because I do keep an eye on that as well. Anyone else? Did you get the comments that John just made? We'll look into that.
So do we want to ask if we want to change the motion on the contract amendment for you?
Did you want to change the motion on that then for that change in the amendment, or
For your contract or for the legal contract?
for the executive officer
Officer
services contract?
This is the one we've already voted on?
Uh-huh.
I think it should go to executive committee.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
And again, I'm just concerned that language is not very clear to me anyway.
Well, I had a feeling, even you not being here, there might be an issue with that.
So we're retracting.
I think it's appropriate, as Commissioner Brown says, for the
Okay.
executive committee to review it and see if anything ought to be done.
Okay. We'll do that next month. Anyone else? Any commissioner reports? CALAFCO or legislative report?
None other than the grant is still moving forward, but that's all I have for an update, really.
Okay.
There's nothing.
Nothing more. We're adjourned. Thank you. Hour and a half. It's not bad.
You really made a lot of progress when I was.
I know. I was hoping to get it all
Yeah,
done
we went
before I got
fast.
here.
Dan, have you seen the email from Devin